The Wilsons never imagined they'd be raising a baby and a puppy at the same time. Just 8 months ago, their world had changed with the arrival of baby Emma, tiny, pink, and bundled in more love than they knew was possible. Sleep had become a luxury. Bottles and pacifiers decorated every surface, and the soothing sounds of white noise machines were the new soundtrack to their lives. Then came Max. He was an 8-week-old golden retriever puppy with oversized paws, floppy ears, and eyes so round and expressive that saying no to him felt criminal. The adoption wasn't exactly planned. Mr. Wilson had impulsively visited a local rescue shelter while picking up pet supplies for his brother. One look at Max curled up in the corner of his kennel, wagging his tail with cautious hope, and he couldn't walk away. "I swear it'll be fine," he told Mrs. Wilson, holding Max like a newborn. "We'll train him. He's gentle. Look at that face." She had stared at him in disbelief. "We already have a newborn." But even she couldn't resist Max's fuzzy charm. Within hours, the little golden ball of energy was exploring their home, skidding across hardwood floors and chewing on anything he could get his tiny teeth into. Despite the madness, something about the arrangement felt oddly perfect. Baby Emma and Max were born just weeks apart. They were both navigating a brand new world full of strange smells, confusing noises, and people cooing over their every move. They were both in the earliest stages of growing up. Messy, magical, unpredictable. At first, the Wilsons kept them apart. Emma mostly stayed in her bouncer or playpen, while Max was restricted to certain rooms. But Max was curious. He would stand at the baby gate, tail wagging furiously, watching Emma with wide-eyed wonder. Whenever she made a sound, a gurgle, a sneeze, a tiny laugh, he perked up and tilted his head like he was trying to decipher some secret baby code. Emma seemed equally intrigued. Her eyes often followed Max's golden blur as he darted past her view. Sometimes she smiled, reaching out as if she could grab him right through the air. One crisp morning, while Emma lounged in her cushioned bouncer in the living room, Mrs. Wilson decided it was time. Max had earned her trust. He was learning commands quickly and showed surprising gentleness for a puppy. She unclipped the baby gate and let him into the room. "Be gentle, Max," she warned softly. Max entered slowly, his nails clicking against the wooden floor. The morning sun bathed the room in golden light, almost matching his fur. He sniffed the air, looked around, then finally saw Emma. She was propped up, bundled in a yellow onesie with cartoon ducks, her chubby legs kicking aimlessly. Max approached cautiously, head low, tail wagging in slow swishes. He sniffed the blanket beneath her first, then crept closer. Emma blinked at him, face filled with fascination. Her tiny hand waved clumsily in the air as if to greet him. Mrs. Wilson watched from the couch, heart full and camera ready. In that quiet moment, two brand new souls met in mutual curiosity. One human, one canine. Neither quite knew what the other was, but both seemed to feel, somehow, that they were connected. Max gave a small sniff toward Emma's socked foot, then gently laid down a few inches from her bouncer, eyes never leaving hers. Emma squealed, delighted. Mrs. Wilson smiled. "Looks like we're going to be just fine." What the Wilsons didn't know was that this peaceful scene was just the beginning of a much more dramatic and hilarious first encounter between baby and pup, because as sweet as Max was, he was still a puppy. And puppies, no matter how adorable, are full of surprises. The following afternoon, the house was unusually quiet. Emma had just finished her nap, cheeks still flushed from sleep, and now sat in her bouncer in the sunlit living room. She looked peaceful, her eyes fluttering slowly around the room, occasionally landing on the colorful mobile hanging nearby. Her soft baby blanket, patterned with tiny clouds, was tucked gently around her legs. Max had been napping too, curled up near the front door, twitching occasionally as if dreaming about chasing something much faster than his short puppy legs could handle. When he finally woke, He gave a long stretch and yawned dramatically, his tiny pink tongue curling in a perfect spiral. Then he heard it. A small coo. A gurgle. The tiniest of squeals. His ears perked. Max stood, tail wagging cautiously, and padded toward the living room. There, in the middle of the floor, was the strange little human who made those mysterious sounds. Emma. He'd been observing her from a distance for the past day, catching glimpses of her from the hallway, occasionally sniffing one of her dropped socks or toys. But now she was fully visible, and to Max's curious puppy mind, she was fascinating. He approached slowly. Emma spotted him right away. Her chubby arms flailed with excitement, and a gummy grin spread across her face. She squealed again, louder this time, her round eyes locked on the golden fluff ball waddling toward her. To Max, the noise was both thrilling and confusing. He tilted his head. Was she calling him? Was that how human puppies talked? As Max reached her, he sniffed the air around her first, unsure. She didn't smell like adults. She smelled like milk and soft soap, and something faintly floral, like the lotion Mrs. Wilson always rubbed on her feet. Max crept closer. His nose brushed her blanket, then her toes. Emma let out a delighted squeak and kicked her foot, accidentally bumping his snout. Startled, Max jumped back half a step, then darted forward again, emboldened now. He gave a little bark, not aggressive, just excited. The kind of bark he gave his stuffed duck when playing fetch. Emma blinked. Then came the moment. Max raised his paw, playfully, clumsily, and tried to tap at the blanket near her side. But he missed. His paw nudged the small plastic rattle beside her instead, sending it rolling across the floor. Then, eager to retrieve it, Max yipped again, louder this time. That was the final straw. Emma's bottom lip began to tremble. Her face shifted like a storm cloud rolling in. And before Max, or anyone, could do a thing, her little lungs let out a wail so strong it echoed down the hallway. Max froze. His ears drooped instantly, and his tail stopped mid-wag. His whole body seemed to say, uh-oh. The sound of Emma's cries hit him hard, like a siren he didn't understand but instinctively knew was bad. He backed away 2 slow steps, eyes wide with worry. Mrs. Wilson appeared from the kitchen in a flash. "Oh no, what happened here?" she exclaimed, hurrying to scoop Emma into her arms. The baby's cries were already tapering, but her little face was red and scrunched in that way that made every mother's heart ache. Max sat back on his haunches, watching nervously. "Max," Mrs. Wilson said gently but firmly, "were you too excited?" He lowered his head. It wasn't scolding exactly, but Max could feel the disappointment in the air, thick and still. He let out a quiet whine and looked up at Emma, who was now hiccuping in her mother's arms, gradually calming. Mrs. Wilson gave him a soft pat on the head. "It's okay, buddy. She's just not used to all that noise yet." Max sighed, and rested his chin on the floor. The room fell quiet again, but it wasn't the peaceful kind of quiet from before. It was the kind that left a puppy wondering if he'd ruined something very important. But Max wasn't done, not by a long shot. Deep down, something told him he needed to fix this. And puppies, just like people, have their own ways of saying, "I'm sorry." The Wilsons had always known Max had a bit of a dramatic flair. He was the kind of puppy who barked at falling leaves, chased his own tail like it was a mortal enemy, and performed somersaults on freshly vacuumed rugs. But he had never caused a full-on baby meltdown. Until today. Even now, moments after the incident, Max was still lying motionless on the living room floor like he was on trial. Emma had calmed down in her mother's arms, now reduced to sniffling hiccups and a wet pacifier. But the earlier wail still echoed in Max's floppy ears. He hadn't meant to scare her. He had just wanted to play, to share that weird shaky rattle thing she had. How was he supposed to know human puppies didn't like sudden noises? Mrs. Wilson, now gently rocking Emma, glanced down at Max. His head was lowered between his paws, and his golden tail lay limp on the carpet behind him. "Oh, Max," she said softly, her tone somewhere between sympathy and amusement. Max lifted his eyes to hers, just slightly. Mrs. Wilson couldn't help but sigh. "You meant well. You just don't know your own volume." She turned toward the hallway to take Emma to her crib for a nap, but Max didn't move. He watched them disappear around the corner and let out a tiny, guilty whimper. His ears twitched at every creak of the floorboards above. He knew the little human was upstairs now, and something told him he wasn't welcome around her anymore. Not yet. The house grew quiet again. Too quiet. Max stood up and wandered over to the edge of Emma's bouncer. Her blanket was still there, slightly crumpled. He sniffed it gently, as if hoping her scent would forgive him. Then, slowly, he turned and padded away, not back to his usual napping spot near the door, but to the far side of the room where the shadows fell across his plush duck toy. He nudged it half-heartedly with his nose. Normally, he'd grab it, toss it, shoo the squeaker until Mrs. Wilson had to hide it on a bookshelf. But not today. Today, the toy just stared back at him with its stitched eyes and dopey smile. Max lay down next to it, resting his chin against its soft wing. For a while, he just listened. The muffled sounds from upstairs told him Emma was finally asleep. The faint lullaby music coming from her baby monitor floated down the staircase, filling the room like a breeze of calm he couldn't quite reach. Max blinked slowly. His tail gave a single, faint wag before going still again. But in the way only dogs can understand, Max was thinking. Not with words or logic, but with feeling. He didn't understand what had gone wrong exactly, but he felt it. He knew he'd made a mistake, and Max was not the kind of pup to leave things broken, especially something as important as a friendship. As the afternoon passed, the house drifted into a lazy silence. Max didn't beg for snacks. He didn't bark at the birds outside the window. He didn't even chew the corner of the rug when no one was looking. Mrs. Wilson noticed the difference. She peeked over the back of the couch and saw him curled around his stuffed duck like it was a security blanket. The sight tugged at her heart. "Sweet boy," she whispered. "You're just a baby too, aren't you?" Max lifted his head slightly, ears twitching at her voice, but he didn't move. The apology hadn't happened yet, not officially, but something had shifted. A sense of quiet determination had crept into Max's golden-furred little frame. Tomorrow, he'd get another chance. And next time, he was going to make it right. In the most Max-like way imaginable. The next morning dawned bright and clear, with sunlight streaming through the windows and casting golden rays over the Wilsons' living room. Birds chirped happily outside, and the faint scent of freshly brewed coffee filled the air. But inside the house, Max was far from his usual playful self. He lay curled up in the corner, head resting on his paws, eyes wide and watching every movement around him. Max's normally exuberant energy was dampened by a lingering cloud of guilt. The previous day's chaos haunted him in a way no chewing toy or belly rub could chase away. Emma was awake, sitting happily in her bouncer, making soft babbling noises that normally sent Max into a tail-wagging frenzy. But today, Max watched from a distance, wary of any sudden movements or loud noises that might upset her again. Mrs. Wilson was busy in the kitchen preparing breakfast, but kept glancing toward the living room. "Come on, Max," she coaxed softly. "It's okay. She's your friend." Max didn't respond. His ears twitched, but he stayed still. Then it happened. Emma's chubby little hands reached out toward Max, her eyes wide with curiosity and excitement. She let out a happy squeal, trying to grab his fur. It was an invitation to play, a chance for Max to show he was a gentle companion. But Max, unsure and nervous, misread the moment. Instead of approaching carefully, he jumped up with enthusiasm, his paws hitting the floor hard as he lunged forward. His excitement overflowed, and before anyone could stop him, Max let out a loud, sharp bark. The sudden noise startled Emma, who was just inches away. Her eyes widened in surprise, and then her face crumpled. Tears welled up instantly, and the wails returned, louder and more heart-wrenching than before. Mrs. Wilson reacted immediately. She rushed across the room and scooped Emma into her arms, rocking her gently and whispering soothing words. "It's okay, sweetie. Mommy's here." Max froze, his tail dropping between his legs. The look on his face was unmistakable, confusion mixed with deep remorse. He lowered his head and let out a soft whimper, his whole body shrinking, as if trying to make himself invisible. "Max," Mrs. Wilson said softly, kneeling beside him. "It's okay. I know you didn't mean to scare her." Max looked up at her with big, apologetic eyes. His ears flattened against his head, and he gave a small, almost sheepish bark. It was the closest thing he had to an apology. For a moment, the three of them sat there, baby crying in her mother's arms, Max looking pitiful on the floor, and Mrs. Wilson caught between comfort and concern. Max's puppy panic was clear. He hadn't wanted to hurt Emma or make her cry. He just hadn't understood how fragile she was. Everything about her, the sounds she made, her quick movements, the way she reacted to noises, was new and confusing. Mrs. Wilson stroked Max's soft fur, whispering calm reassurances. "You're learning, Max. We all are." Emma's cries softened as Mrs. Wilson sang a gentle lullaby. Max stayed close, watching quietly, as if vowing silently to do better. Later, when Emma was calm and resting, Max lay nearby, a little shadow in the warm afternoon light. His big golden eyes followed her every move with tenderness and curiosity. Mrs. Wilson smiled as she watched them. "They'll figure it out," she thought. "They just need time." And Max was ready to take that time, step by careful step. The afternoon sunlight streamed gently through the living room window, casting warm patches of light on the carpeted floor. Max lay curled up near the base of the couch, his golden fur glowing in the soft glow. But today, the usual puppy sparkle was missing from his eyes. For the first time in his young life, Max felt the heavy weight of guilt. He thought back to the moment when Emma's cries had erupted, the loud, sudden bark that had shattered the calm. He hadn't meant to frighten her. He had only wanted to say hello, to be friends. But the way her face had crumpled and the tears that had spilled out, it was like he had unintentionally hurt someone he cared about deeply. Max didn't chase his favorite squeaky toy today. He didn't race around the house like the little whirlwind he usually was. Instead, he lay still, his big brown eyes fixed on Emma, who was now sitting contentedly in her high chair, happily munching on a soft teething biscuit. Emma glanced over at him and gave a little coo. Max responded with a soft whine and inched a few steps closer, careful to keep his movements slow and gentle. He didn't want to startle her again. Mrs. Wilson sat nearby, watching the two with a mixture of amusement and tenderness. "You're a good boy, Max," she whispered. "You just have to learn her language." Max seemed to understand. Slowly, almost hesitantly, he moved closer to Emma's play mat, where colorful toys were scattered in a happy mess. He sniffed at a plush ball, then nudged it gently with his nose, as if to offer a peace token. Emma giggled and clapped her hands, her eyes sparkling with delight. Max's tail gave a tiny wag, but he still kept his distance. When Emma reached out with her pudgy hands to touch Max's soft fur, he flinched for a moment, then stayed perfectly still. He let her pet him, his tail twitching nervously, but his body relaxed slightly. It was a breakthrough. For the rest of the afternoon, Max stayed close but respectful, learning slowly how to be gentle with the tiny human who was so new to the world. Whenever Emma babbled or made noise, Max listened carefully, sometimes tilting his head as if trying to understand her. And when Emma fussed or cried, Max stayed nearby, lying quietly so she could feel safe. That evening, after Emma was tucked into bed, Max retreated to his favorite corner with his stuffed duck toy. But this time, instead of chewing it, he gently nudged it toward the door, as if offering it up to the family as a sign of goodwill. Mrs. Wilson smiled when she saw this small gesture. "He's growing up," she murmured. Max's puppy heart was full of new feelings: curiosity, love, and most of all, the desire to make things right. He didn't know exactly how to say sorry, but he was determined to find out. The next morning dawned crisp and bright, filled with the gentle sounds of birds chirping outside the Wilsons' window. Inside, the household buzzed with the soft, comforting routines of baby Emma's first hours of wakefulness. Emma's soft coos and tiny squeals floated through the air like a melody, filling the room with innocence and hope. Max was awake too, and today he felt a little different. No longer weighed down by the confusion and guilt from the day before, Max was determined to make things right with his tiny human friend. His golden fur gleamed in the sunlight as he quietly padded over to the living room, where Emma sat in her playpen, her bright eyes locked on a colorful toy. Slowly, Max approached the playpen, lowering his head in a gentle, respectful gesture. He was careful to keep his tail wagging softly. No sudden movements, no loud noises, just calm, gentle puppy love. Emma noticed him right away. Her face lit up with excitement, and she babbled happily, reaching her tiny hands toward the golden fur just beyond her reach. Max, sensing her joy, nudged the edge of the playpen with his nose, then carefully pressed his paw against the side, as if to say, "I'm sorry." Mrs. Wilson, standing nearby, couldn't help but smile at the sight. "Look at that," she whispered. "Max is apologizing in his own way." Emma giggled, her hands reaching further to pet Max's soft head. Max responded by leaning in just enough to let her touch him, the warmth of her tiny hands melting away any remaining doubts or fears. But then Max decided to take things a step further. He gently picked up his favorite squeaky toy, the plush duck he'd refused to chew the day before, and carried it over to Emma's playpen. Carefully, so as not to startle her, he dropped the toy right next to her little hands. Emma's eyes widened with delight. She grabbed the toy immediately, shaking it and giggling as it squeaked. Max wagged his tail so hard it seemed like it might lift him off the floor. Mrs. Wilson laughed softly, wiping a tear from her eye. "That's the sweetest apology I've ever seen." For the next hour, Max and Emma played side by side, the room filled with happy noises and gentle movements. Max was patient and gentle, taking cues from Emma and adapting as they bonded. Max's earlier missteps were forgotten. What mattered was this moment, the moment when a puppy's clumsy apology turned into a genuine friendship. That evening, as Emma was tucked into bed and Max curled up at the foot of her crib, the Wilsons felt a wave of peace settle over their home. Their little family was growing in ways they hadn't imagined, filled with love, forgiveness, and the kind of unspoken understanding that only comes from heart to heart. Max may have started as just a playful puppy, but now he was so much more: a protector, a friend, and the cutest little apology Emma could have ever wished for. Days passed, and the Wilson household grew warmer with the blossoming friendship between Emma and Max. Each morning, the golden retriever woke with renewed enthusiasm, eager to greet his tiny human friend. Max had learned to read Emma's cues better, knowing when to approach gently, when to sit patiently, and when to back away to give her space. Mrs. Wilson watched the two with a fond smile. "Look at them," she'd say to herself. "It's like they're learning a secret language only they understand." Max's mornings now began with a gentle nuzzle against Emma's cheek, carefully mindful not to wake her too suddenly. Emma, in turn, giggled softly, reaching out to stroke Max's soft ears or to squeeze his fluffy paws. Their moments together were simple but precious, the soft babble of a baby and the contented sigh of a puppy forming an unspoken bond. One afternoon, Emma's high chair was pushed to the living room for lunch. Max sat nearby, his tail thumping gently on the floor, watching with bright eyes as Emma tried to master her spoon. Occasionally, she'd drop a small piece of food, and Max was quick to gobble it up. A reward, he thought, for being such a good puppy. But it wasn't just about food or play. Max had become Emma's guardian in ways that surprised even Mrs. Wilson. One day, Emma reached toward a shiny, dangling ornament on the coffee table, her tiny fingers grasping blindly. Max was there instantly, stepping between her and the object, his body low and protective. His soft growl wasn't threatening, just a gentle reminder that some things weren't safe for little hands. Emma looked up at Max with wide eyes, and then back at the ornament. She let out a small, uncertain sound and turned her attention to her toys instead. Max's tail wagged slowly, his mission accomplished. Mrs. Wilson's heart swelled with gratitude. "You're her protector, Max," she said quietly. "She's lucky to have you." Trust, it seemed, was no longer just a word. It was something alive and growing between the baby and the puppy. At night, Max settled by Emma's crib, his golden fur shimmering in the moonlight filtering through the curtains. He listened carefully to her soft breathing, alert to every sound. If Emma stirred or cried, Max would quietly nudge Mrs. Wilson or let out a soft whine, alerting her that the baby needed comfort. One evening, when Emma woke with a start and began to fuss, Max's gentle presence seemed to soothe her almost instantly. His soft nose brushed her tiny hand, and Emma's cries faded into soft coos. Mrs. Wilson smiled sleepily, watching the bond deepen before her eyes. Max's journey from clumsy puppy to loving companion wasn't just about making amends. It was about building a lifelong friendship. With every wag of his tail, every gentle lick, and every careful step, Max showed Emma that she was never alone. And for Emma, Max wasn't just a dog. He was a friend, a guardian, and a heartwarming reminder that love comes in the fluffiest, most unexpected packages. Weeks slipped by in a golden blur of laughter, learning, and love. Max and Emma had grown inseparable, their bond strengthening with every day that passed. What had begun with a frightened puppy and a crying baby had blossomed into a heartwarming friendship that filled the Wilson household with joy. One sunny afternoon, the family gathered in the backyard, the air filled with the sweet scent of blooming flowers and freshly cut grass. Emma, now a little more confident and curious, sat in her stroller, her wide eyes sparkling as she watched Max romp happily in the sunshine. Max's golden coat gleamed as he chased a bright red ball, tongue lolling in pure puppy bliss. He was faster now, more confident, and incredibly gentle around Emma. When the ball rolled near her, Max carefully nudged it toward her stroller with his nose, inviting her to play. Emma clapped her hands excitedly, squealing with delight as she reached for the ball. Mrs. Wilson smiled from a nearby bench, watching the magical exchange. "They're truly the best of friends," she murmured. As the afternoon wore on, Emma's nap time approached. Mrs. Wilson carefully lifted her from the stroller and carried her inside, with Max trotting dutifully at her side. Inside the cozy nursery, Max settled down on the soft rug, his eyes never leaving Emma as she nestled into her crib. The house was peaceful now, the soft hum of a lullaby filling the room. Max lay down beside the crib, his head resting gently on his paws. Emma stirred, sensing the familiar warmth beside her, and smiled in her sleep. Mrs. Wilson entered the room, her heart full. "Thank you, Max," she whispered, brushing a strand of hair from Emma's forehead. Max's tail thumped softly in response. He knew, in his own puppy way, that this was his family, and that he would protect and love Emma for all the days to come. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm orange glow through the windows, the Wilson family gathered for dinner. The day's events had woven a thread of connection that bound them closer than ever. Max sat patiently by Emma's high chair, his eyes shining with affection and loyalty. Emma reached out to touch his fur, and Max gently licked her tiny hand in return. The moment was simple but perfect, a reminder that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can build the strongest bridges. From the first frightened bark to the softest apology, Max's journey had been one of growth, understanding, and unconditional love. And Emma, she had found a friend who would stand by her side through every milestone, every tear, and every laugh. In the years to come, there would be many more adventures, tumbles and giggles, naps in sunny spots, and long walks in the park. But no matter what the future held, one thing was certain. Max and Emma were forever friends. Their story was a beautiful reminder that love sometimes comes wrapped in fur and wagging tails, and that the sweetest apologies can be the start of something truly magical.